welcome back to another exciting episode of The Secret Solve. This is a program where I go through the back of the book, look for clues and any indication that the artists, the authors, and illustrators, and Byron himself might have put clues to assist us in finding the locations to the treasure. And today's exciting program will be about the Nightmare, otherwise known as the Incubus Megidus urbanus. Incubus Megidus urbanus. Well, this one, they did not do a very good job in disguising, folks. This is one of the easier puzzles to decipher. And it's all because of the references that they make. So, they point us in the direction of William Randolph Hearst Sr. And they start out by telling us about the yellow journalism that was occurring in New York City and the fight between the publisher Pulitzer and Hearst, and trying to gain control of the eyeballs of the New York market. Uh, the New York Journal was published by Hearst, and Pulitzer was publishing the New York World. And it was the idea of one of them basically sensationalized the Spanish atrocities in Cuba while calling for war in 1898 against Spain. So this is all about the yellow journalism in New York. That's what they're first introducing you to. Uh, so William Randolph Hearst becomes the night mayor when he runs for mayor of New York. And so he runs for the mayor of New York, but he loses twice. But he was able to become elected twice to the U.S. House of Representatives. And he ran for president of the United States. So unsuccessfully ran for mayor in 1905 and 1909, and unsuccessfully ran for president of the United States in 1904. That's William Randolph Hearst. Now, the rest of this you can read about, but first of all, he was born in San Francisco, California. He died conveniently in Beverly Hills, California. So you get both the reference to possible Beverly Hills, Southern California, and San Francisco, Northern California. He kind of splits you in that way. His story was the main inspiration for Charles Foster Kane, otherwise known as Citizen Kane, and this was Orson Welles' production. So we're definitely talking about William Randolph Hearst in this particular story. So he was born in San Francisco to George Hearst, a millionaire mining engineer, owner of gold and other mines and corporations, and his much younger wife, Phoebe Apperson Hearst. And she was known to be a great philanthropist. And she was from a small town in Missouri. Oh, interesting. So was a few other people from a small town in Missouri. Who could that be? Walt Disney? There you go. But I don't think that's the most important part of this article. Okay, so they talk about the South Carolina early settlers of Hearst and all of this, and finally you get to Hearst attended the preparatory school in Concord. He is a Harvard. Oh, he enrolled in Harvard, and he was a member of. Oh, he did actually get into the Hasty Pudding Theatrics and the Lampoon, but he got expelled. The Harvard Lampoon is an undergraduate humor publication founded in 1876 by 7 undergraduates at Harvard University. You see, National Lampoon, Harvard Lampoon magazine, has material and written articles and stories that date back to the 1870s. And that is why the Lampoon magazine has a rich amount of history to write about, because they've already written about it and have the archives. So if you got to remember, Harvard has been lampooning people since 1876. And so these stories about people who have had tragedy, it goes back years and years and years. His antics have ranged from sponsoring massive beer parties in Harvard Square to sending pudding pots used as chamber pots to his professors. Oh, the old chamber pot. Yes, don't send a porta potty to your professor. Okay, so in the publishing world, you have the San Francisco Examiner. This can throw you into a lot of stuff. The New York Morning Journal. I talked about the rivalry. We talked about Spanish War. He eventually ended up having 28 newspapers, including Los Angeles, Boston, Atlanta, Chicago, Detroit, Seattle, Washington Herald, and San Francisco. He also started publishing Cosmopolitan, Good Housekeeping, Town and Country, and Harper's Bazaar. These are all creations of the Hearst publishing empire. So he became okay. So in 1929, he became one of the sponsors of the first round-the-world voyage of an airship. So he's got connectivity to Zeppelins, and he did this in New Jersey. The ship's captain was Dr. Hugo Eckler. So if you want to talk about airships and airship disasters, there is the famous photograph that many people probably younger have not actually seen, but the Hindenburg is basically something that if you want to tie in to the article at this point, you can look at this whole tie into the airborne spaceship. And the Hindenburg disaster actually occurred in 1937 at Manchester Township, New Jersey. And it was an LZ 129, not a 982. Sorry, it was a 129. The Hindenburg Zeppelin D-LZ 129. And the Hindenburgs were a class of ships. But anyway, unfortunately, it was either in a lightning storm or the gases ignited or something happened. And the Hindenburg caught fire and quickly became engulfed in flames. And there's a famous radio broadcast of somebody saying, "Oh, the humanity! Oh, the humanity!" And it was filled with, I think, hydrogen. And the hydrogen, ignited. And Murray Becker famously took several photographs of this. The news coverage, I don't know if it was Herbert Morrison's eyewitness report for the radio station WLS in Chicago was one of the reporters on the screen, and I think he is the one that actually panned the phrase, "Oh, the humanity, the humanity." The deaths. So there were a total of 35 deaths out of the 97 people on the airship, including 13 of the 36 passengers and 22 of the 61 crew. It took 61 people to fly a Zeppelin back in 1937, apparently. So, I'm not going to go through the victim list or the survivor list, but I thought it'd be fun to just look into Zeppelins. The Goodyear blimp. So the reason I brought all this up is because I personally believe that in one of the images that kind of has those towers that look like water towers, I swear that I see in one of those images a Zeppelin or a Goodyear blimp or something like that, and it's moored or not moored or whatever. And so I just bring that up because of that. And we were talking about William Randolph Hearst, obviously. So In Hearst, he got involved in politics. We mentioned that. He expanded his range. He supported Nazi Germany. Nice guy. Hey, I'm in favor. All right, Millicent Wilson was a 20-year-old chorus girl in New York, and he married her and had 5 sons: George, Randolph, William Jr., and some others. And Marion Davis, conceding an end to his political hopes, Hearst became involved in an affair with Marion Davies, former mistress of his friend Paul Bloch. And so this whole love triangle, I guess, kind of develops between these three. So from 1919, he lived openly with her in California after the death of Patricia Lake. She's an American actress, radio comedian, presented as a niece of actress Marion Davis. She was long suspected of being her natural daughter, fathered by Randolph Hearst. And she lived from 19, who had been presented as Davies' niece. Her family confirmed that she was Davies and Hearst's daughter. She acknowledged this before her death. So there's a separation between Millicent Wilson. You could probably look into Marion Davis a little bit more if you wanted to come up with some fun, interesting things, if you will. There's this thing called the Hearst Castle that some people are excited about. There was an Arabian horse breeding operation on the grounds, if you like the horses, and some other places. But I like the Hearst for a Beverly Hills mansion myself. So Hearst paid $120,000 for an H-shaped Beverly Hills mansion. This goes along with the H and the Hollywood sign and the Hollywood sign jumper, all that stuff. And this is actually located 1101 North Beverly Drive. It's 3 blocks from Sunset Boulevard. The Beverly House, as it has come to be known, is related to John and Jackie Kennedy, stayed at the house as part of their honeymoon. And the house appeared in the film The Godfather in 1972. So I personally, some people like the Hearst Castle. I personally like the Beverly Hills Mansion. If we're looking at a connection to The Secret, that's the one I go to. He was an art collector, mainly of Greek vases, so that helps you with the Greek idea. And one of the things he had was Charles Dickens' sideboard pulpit stained glass arms and armor. So he actually had the armor of Charles Dickens and Washington's waistcoat and Thomas Jefferson's Bible. When Hearst Castle was donated to the state of California, it was furnished with a whole house and was operated as a museum. There's a couple other of places. So in the final years, he donated some works to the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, and don't see how he actually died, but anyway. So he is shown in the movie pictures originally as Citizen Kane. Well, you can't talk about William Randolph Hearst without talking about Patty Hearst. And the reason I say that is because Patty Hearst was top of mind, a big deal in the 1970s. And Patty Hearst is the granddaughter of William Randolph Hearst. And Patty Campbell Hearst, she was, is she 69 now? Holy cow, she's 69 already. Anyway, so Patty Hearst was a big deal when she was supposedly kidnapped by the Randolph, or the, I'm just going to call them this SLA. It's the Symbionese Liberation Army, SLA. So this SLA was, a far, I guess, left radical vanguard movement. There was another group of people, and they basically were accused of kidnapping Patty Hearst, and the main thing about it is that so the Hearst kidnapping was opportunistic, as she happened to live near the SLA hideout. According to testimony at the trial, the group's main intention was to leverage the Hearst family political influence to free two SLA members who had been arrested for the killing in November of 1973 of Marcus Foster, a superintendent of the Oakland Public Schools. They were Russ Little and Joe Ramiro. After the state refused to free the men, the SL demanded that the Hearst family distribute $70 worth of food to every needy California, an operation that would cost an estimated $400 million at the time. In response, Hearst's father took a loan and arranged the immediate donation of $2 million worth of food to the poor of the Bay Area for 1 year in a project called People in Need. After the distribution descended into chaos, the SLA refused to release Hearst. So, according to Hearst's later testimony, she was held for a week in a closet, blindfolded, and with her hands tied. During this time, the SLA founder, Donald DeFreeze, repeatedly threatened her with death. She was let out for meals, still blindfolded, and began to join in the group's political discussions. She was given a flashlight to read the SLA political tactics to memorize. Hearst was confined in the closet for weeks. She said, DeFreeze told me that the War Council had decided or was thinking about killing me or me staying with them, and that I better start thinking about that as a possibility. Hearst said, I accommodated my thoughts to coincide with theirs. In an earlier account dated April 74, Hearst said that she had been offered the choice of being released or joining the SLA. So the whole big thing was the question did she stay willingly, or did she have Stockholm syndrome, or did she become part of the group after her kidnapping? So that is why you want to talk about this. And this, of course, is San Francisco history. She claims she was brainwashed. I don't want to leave you hanging, and I can't actually remember. So after a few months, Hearst provided information to authorities not under oath of SLA activities. A bomb exploded at Hearst Castle in 76. After Hearst testified that Wolf had raped her, Emily Harris gave a magazine interview from jail alleging that Hearst keeping a trinket given to her by Wolf was an indication that she had been in a romantic relationship with him instead. Hearst said that he had kept the stone carving because she thought it was pre-Columbian artifact of the archaeological significance. James L. Browning Jr. used Harris's interpretation of the item. Anyway, closing arguments, conviction. So in 1976, in March, Hearst was convicted of bank robbery and using a firearm during the commission of a felony. She was given the maximum sentence of 35 years. He gave her 7 years imprisonment, and so she served 7 years. Hearst suffered a collapsed lung in prison, the beginning of a series of medical problems. And Jimmy Carter, along with the other people that Carter let out of jail, one of them was a child rapist, was another one of his early releasers and partners. Okay, so that pretty much covers the whole Hearst. Well, it doesn't cover all of the Hearst connections, but remember I talked earlier about the Limp Mansion, and being put in the closet for a few weeks was probably not quite as traumatic as having to live in a mansion for years and years and being a Down syndrome baby. The monkey-faced boy of the Limp Mansion. So I think, that would be a real nightmare. So they try to tie these stories together and give you enough information to get at what they're talking about. And the way they do that in this case is not only did they talk about William Randolph Hearst, but they also talked about the yellow journalism and Joseph Pulitzer. And so let's look at Joseph Pulitzer. And then when we find out here shortly that Joseph Pulitzer has a connection to St. Louis, the story that we have in the Hearst family, and then the fact that we're being introduced to Pulitzer and something that might have occurred in St. Louis allows you to put this all together. So he was a newspaper publisher of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. If you look at the one image, there's the face and there's the post. Well, this is the post part of the face. And then the face, of course, is obviously the the limp child, Down syndrome baby. He was elected a congressman from New York. So another political newspaper guy. We talked about the whole thing. Excuse me, between Hearst and Pulitzer when it came to yellow journalism. So he was born Pulitzer Zazev, name order by Hungarian custom in Macau. And again, some of you like the werewolf in that image. I'm perfectly fine with that because here's the werewolf. So that was east of Budapest, the son of Elias Berger. And Berger, maybe McDonald's in that other story. I may be getting ahead of myself. Okay, the Pulitzers were among several Jewish families living in the area. Well, I always like when we have another Jewish person of ancestry come to the United States. Of course, they're all Jewish people. So he was in the Austrian army. So after the war, Pulitzer returned to New York City, where he stayed briefly. He moved to New Bedford, Massachusetts, for the whaling industry. Moby Dick. I see whales in some of these images. New Bedford Bedford's beds. Oh, Simmons Mattress Company. Okay. All right. So here's the interesting story. He traveled by side door Pullman, a freight boxcar, to St. Louis, Missouri. He sold his one possession, a white handkerchief, for 75 cents. Oh, in that image, is there a handkerchief? I probably not. That would make it too easy to solve the puzzle. The lights of St. Louis look like a promised land to me. Oh, there was a mention of lights in here and darkness. And let's see, it says, he fills your head with horrible headlines as he pounces from the shadows to ask you for a light. One of the famous quotes here that we have when Pulitzer arrives in his biography, he says, "The lights of St. Louis look like a promised land to me." It's all historically accurate, people. The phrasing in the book is historically accurate. And remember, we talked about radiators before, and now he's talking about under your bed. We talked about Simmons and beds before. We talked about radiators before in the Radiator Company. They repeat over and over and over and over in this book the things that you need to be keen in on. But nobody reads the back of the book. Okay, so you got the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Pulitzer spent his free time at the St. Louis Mercantile Library. Holy cow, I wonder what Mr. Pulitzer did at the library. Did it involve something that looked like a checkerboard? Hold on, let me see. Okay, so the library on the corner of 5th and Locust, he was studying English and reading voraciously. He made a lifelong friend there in the librarian, Udo Brachvogel. I bet that guy is probably Jewish. He often played in the library chess room where Carl Schurz noticed his aggressive style. Okay, so we have an image with a grandfather clock, Hungarian. We have a werewolf, Hungarian. We have a post, St. Louis Post-Dispatch. We have a checkerboard image in the background. And a guy who likes to play chess. Maybe that's a chess piece, people. Maybe it's just a horse. Maybe it's not a werewolf. Or maybe it's the horses that pull the carriage of the Lavender Lady. The checkerboard is what color? And adding to this, and not previously mentioned before, is the Ralston Purina Company, who famously had a logo, the checkerboard square. And we just recently talked about twinning and the fact that that is one of the oldest logos in the United States. Swoosh! Okay. I'm getting overly excited because of the fact that I'm bringing actual, real, tangible, and factual information to a puzzle in the secret that nobody seems to want to provide about New Orleans and the same image. Okay. Oh well, Pulitzer. Soon after he did some work in the Louisiana sugar plantation. Well, okay, let's get on to that. I would rather take my connections of Pulitzer to St. Louis because I've tied him to the checkerboard and I've tied him to the library, right? And I've tied him to his sole possession and I've tied him to a quote that's in the back of the book. Well, let's go on. Okay, so Pulitzer greatly admired the German-born Schurz, an emblem of success attainable by a foreign-born citizen through his own energies and skills. Pulitzer was admitted to the bar, but his broken English and odd appearance kept clients away. He struggled with the execution of minor papers and collecting of debts. That year, when Will-shaped Post needed a reporter, he was offered a job. Soon after, he and several men each paid a fast-talking promoter $5 after being promised a good-paying jobs on a Louisiana sugar plantation. They boarded a steamboat, which took them downriver 30 miles south of the city, where the crew forced them off. When the boat turned away, the men concluded the promised plantation jobs had been a ruse. Oh, the whole New Orleans thing is a ruse, isn't it? It's just a ruse. Oh, I see why. I see why the people who are in charge of the secret right now are telling you what's in New Orleans is because they want you to discover the real truth. And the real truth is Pulitzer was involved in a scheme to go work on a Louisiana plantation, sugar plantation. And you see the sugar bag that's exploding in image number 2, right? Okay. Well, that has to do with something else entirely. Okay, so he got involved in politics and the railroads and some other stuff. He became a state representative from Missouri. Earlier, we had somebody that was born in a rural Missouri town. When Tom, okay, so there's Pulitzer's postback, distraught, Jane. Okay, so this whole slayback thing. So we also have Pulitzer in New York. And the thing about it is the Liberty Enlightening the World, the Statue of Liberty, stained glass window commissioned by Pulitzer to commemorate the New York's World fundraising for the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty. Remember, we talked about the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty. We talked about the pedestal and the famous words, "Give me your tired, your humble, your whatever, seeking and longing to be free." And that there was a fundraising campaign for the Statue of Liberty. Well, who else got involved in that but Joseph Pulitzer? And so this actual sculpture is installed at the New York World Building. It was moved to Pulitzer Hall at Columbia University later. So maybe they are connecting stories in the back of the book. So he moved. Okay, so Pulitzer's moved to New York full time, leasing a home in Gramercy Park. He recruited. Okay, he invest. He basically. You may read about Nellie Bly at some point. Nellie Bly is this investigative journalist, and that person became on the step. So Pulitzer also constructed the New York World Building and in the Civic Center of Manhattan. It's along Park Row between Frankfurt Street and Brooklyn Bridge. Part of Lower Manhattan's former newspaper row was designed by George P. B. Post in the Renaissance Revival style. Well, perhaps this is why there's that post in that image and there's that baby's face. I don't know. But you're talking about two newspaper magnates, and you have a section of New York called Newspaper Row. Maybe something to look at there. George B. Post was an American architect trained in Beaux Arts tradition. He was recognized as the master of marketing and is an instrumental in the birth of the skyscraper. Oh, well, let's just take a detour and click on his name and see what else we can find out. Uh, uh, Many of his most characteristic projects were commercial buildings that pushed traditional boundaries. He's born in Manhattan, New York University. We probably know some other people that graduated from there. He was in the military. He was in the Civil War under General Burnside. We love it whenever we can find a burned side. Oh, by the way, if you look at General Burnside, man, he's got some massive side burns. One of those images has a guy with massive sideburns. Uh, he's a governor of Rhode Island. Oh, I bet you we've missed him. I think he was probably. I bet you he was born in Liberty, Indiana. I wonder if Liberty, Indiana, is close to Indianapolis. He settled in South Carolina. Uh, Charlotte Lottie Moon. Oh, I love it. Did you see all the moons in the image? Virginia Jenny Moon. She was a Confederate spy. Oh, wow. There's some good stuff in here, but I'm not going to take this detour right now because I want to finish up with the connections of the Panama Canal and Theodore Roosevelt and J.P. Morgan and the San Francisco newspaper that Pulitzer was involved with, and the rivalry. Okay, so he got depressed. He retreated to the Jekyll Island Club in Jekyll Island, Georgia, and his summer vacation retreat in Bar Harbor, Maine. So we talked about the what was it? The some information about Maine earlier. Well, maybe they're referring to the home here. So in 1878, at age 31, Pulitzer married Catherine Katy Davis, a woman of high social standing from Georgetown, District of Columbia. They had 7 children. So for 6 months during 1908, Pulitzer was attended by his personal physician, C. Lewis. C. Lewis. Leopold, another. So we're supposed to see St. Louis, right? Okay. What's his yacht's name, by the way? Liberty. What street was the Cleveland one found on? Liberty. While traveling to his winter home at Jekyll Island Club in Georgia, Pulitzer had his yacht stop in Charleston Harbor. Is this why you're looking in Charleston, South Carolina? So the people are looking in Charleston, South Carolina, based upon one line that has to do with Joseph Pulitzer, folks. One-line solvers. I applaud you right now. You can pull out one single line in Pulitzer's biography and come up with a solve based upon that. Excellent, my friends. Okay, Pulitzer listened to his German secretary read out loud King Louis of France. So, where is King Louis of France's church hill at? Where's the church? Where's the church for Louis? Well, one of the most famous King Louis churches is in St. Louis near the Arch, where you have a foot. Oh, a limp, if you will. 1 foot, not 2 feet, 1 foot with an arch on it. Because it's limping. Because it's painful to have an arch on your toes. Okay, as a secretary near the end, Pulitzer said in German, "Liest ganz ruhig." That means softly, quite softly. And he died. His body was returned to New York for service and interred at Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx. Okay, I've had my fun with South Carolina and all that. Let's go on with the story. J.M. Barrie is the next person mentioned in the nightmares, the category nightmares. And I'm kind of taking this one from what I think to be the most relevant information to the least relevant information, but it's all relevant information. So, Sir James Matthew Barrie is the first Baroness of Scottish novel. He was a Scottish novelist and playwright. He created Peter Pan. He created Peter Pan, the boy that wouldn't grow up, and West End. Uh, so I think the most important part of this is not his family upbringing, where he's from, or any of that. I think you need to just get into Peter Pan. I think it's all about the Peter. It's all about the Pan. Uh, and so I think he wrote drama reviews for the Edinburgh Evening Current. And so that gives you the fact that he was uh, a writer, a journalist, if you will. He became a staff journalist for the Nottingham Journal. And so he was indeed another journalist of another countryist. Uh, but I think you've got to get Peter Pan, the boy who wouldn't grow up, the little white bird, and those type of things. He was, by the way, he had a long correspondence with fellow Scot Robert Louis Stevenson, who lived in Samoa at the time. So, if you like the Robert Louis Stevenson Monument in San Francisco, uh, and you're talking about a San Francisco paper guy, the guy that had a newspaper, and now you're talking about a newspaper guy that has a relationship with Robert Louis Stevenson. This could possibly get you closer to solving the Portsmouth Square solve for San Francisco by using the Robert Louis Stevenson Monument and the back of the book information about J.M. Barrie. Gloucester, he stayed at the Stanway House in the village of Gloucester, and uh, this is interesting only in that that's about the third or fourth time we found somebody from Gloucester in that. Llewellyn Davies family. And maybe we're supposed to be getting into the Davieses because didn't we just talk about Joseph Pulitzer and the fact that he married Catherine Kate Davis? And now we are talking about Barrie and a Llewellyn Davies. Oh, I don't know, probably a stretch there. But the reason I mention this is because this is where Peter Pan developed. It developed with his relationship with the family where they used to play a little fun game as children. The character of Peter Pan was invented to entertain George and Jack. Barrie would say to amuse them that their little brother Peter could fly. He claimed that the baby birds, before they were born, parents put bars on the nursery windows to keep the little ones from flying away. Well, this might explain the bars in the image for San Francisco, Fortress North, cold as glass. They grew into a tale of baby boy who did fly away. So that's the story that Jack Llewellyn Davies was told. And maybe this just gets you to the Union Jack that we just talked about. A couple of, the Union Jack is the story in front of us, and maybe they're just talking about the, Jack. The Jack that we needed to find was not the one I found, but instead this Jack Llewellyn Davies. And so we're basically talking about Peter Pan, the starting and the beginning and the origination of Peter Pan. The thing about the Barries is that Barrie was famous for having a Saint Bernard dog. And in fact, there's a portrait on the Wikipedia of his dog. So again, we're introduced in this back of the book material the idea of man and dog. We were also shown the same image of woman and dog in the Toronto Toronto ogre, if you will. And dogs and the relationship to man was also shown to us in the Call of the Wild, the Jack London story that was also presented earlier in the book. Okay, I don't want to beat on this too long because you can find your own connections in the back of the book of man with dog relationships, and I just like to point them out when I find them. And here's another example of man with dog. Now, another famous man with dog is obviously our the son of Sam Killer, who had a relationship with his neighbor's dog, Sam. And if you like a solve in John Paul Jones Park, and you also like the relationship of man with dog, and in the book here it says that the nightmare sometimes is under that broken street lamp. You can look up where the Valetti guy, who ended up having color blindness because of the actions of David Berkowitz, and you can also later find in the back of the book a picture of a car underneath a street lamp that eerily looks like a location close to Bath Beach. And in that image, a guy is wearing a bath robe, and there's a figure that looks like there's a carrot in the nose, and the carrots were planted in the gardens there at the Bath Beach Park, and that's where Valetti's car was parked. And if you look very closely in that image, there is an AK gun in the nose of the image figure. And if the image figure is David Berkowitz, he was famously arrested, and they went downstairs and found an automatic weapon in his car. I'm warming you up for some later material in the back of the book, but I want to give you a preview so you're not so shocked when you find it later. All right, so that's Bari. Any tour of Peter Pan, by the way, would not be complete unless, of course, you understand that in the time in which we all grew up, flying through the theater on a mere thin wire was none other than Sandy Duncan. And the role of Peter Pan has not been played as great since the days in which the New London, Texas. Okay, so if Canada and all of these towns in Canada are basically parts of New London, and while we talked about London a lot in the book, we talked about Jack London. Well, Jack London, Call of the Wild, all the references to the dog and that the dog sled, and Seattle, and all that was in the Call of the Wild in London. Now we have Duncan, who is most known as, I hate to say it, Peter Pan, was from New London, Texas. She was born to Sylvia and Mansell Ray Duncan, a gas station owner. Oh, a gas station owner. Well, remember we saw Little Richard earlier, hanging from we saw Little Richard. He was hanging from a gas hose, and Little Richard got in trouble because he was arrested for voyeurism when he was a peeping Tom at a gas station. Oh, I wonder where that gas station was. Well, no, it wasn't in New London, but again, repeating themes in the back of the book. She spent her early years there before moving to Tyler, Texas. When she was a third grade, she performed in her first dance recital at the age of 5. So Duncan started her career at age 12, working in a local production of The King and I. And she appeared in a California bank commercial and a soap opera, Search for Tomorrow. Well, we already have we talked about the soap operas yet or not? I don't know. I can't remember. But anyway, here, the soap opera. But most interestingly enough, Duncan made her a feature film debut, co-starring with Dean Jones in the Walt Disney family comedy, The $1 Million Duck. The $1 Million Duck. Well, remember earlier, like 1 or 2 stories ago, we were talking about the gentlemen that were looking hunt. So our Jack joins the traditional hunt, potting flash frozen grouse hurled from behind a Douglas fir tree. Okay, well, I know it's a stretch, but the $1 Million Duck. Then she was cast as Amy something in the Star Spangled Girl. Oh, I always loved Star Spangled. Remember, we have the whole Americana thing that was in this book earlier. And again, that was a Broadway play by Neil Simon. Anytime we run into a Simon or a Simmons or a mattress of that type. I always like it when I can get there. And then she was in Funny Face. Well, Funny Face. Oh, I get it. So the face that looks kind of funny in that one image, right? And that one image is a funny face, a child with Down syndrome, sadly. But it's again in an image, so we have her. Oh, by the way, critics dismiss the show but praise Duncan, especially TV Guide columnist Cleveland Armory. Well, that's probably just coincidence, but Duncan underwent surgery to remove a benign brain tumor behind her left optic nerve. Oh man, that just takes me back to General Patton and his problems with his head. She lost vision in her left eye, but because it's still tracked with her right eye. Okay, many people think that something in that one image has to do with color blindness or blindness, right? And here I have somebody that I've discovered by the name of Sandy Duncan. What was Byron's wife's name, by the way? You can all yell it out loud if you'd like. Sandy Mendelson, right? Okay, Sandy. All right, so coincidence, I'm sure. Funny face. Okay, so Duncan and her doctors elected to leave it in place. Her recovery from the operation was rapid. So they suspended production on Funny Face due to this. Well, she went on to be in Pinocchio as well. And I've always thought that maybe I missed the mark when I tried to insinuate that the person with the big nose was Jimmy Durante, when in fact I should have been looking at the cartoon character Pinocchio for that. I'm not going to go on that tangent right now, but so Duncan then returned to the Broadway stage for many years. In '79, her run to the title role in Peter Pan won her many acclaims. She also had replacement roles in My One and Only and Chicago, Chicago is a 1975 American musical with music of John Kander, lyrics by Fred Ebb, and a book by Ebb and Bob Fosse, set in Chicago in the Jazz Age. Oh, Chicago. The same title by reporter Maureen Dallas Watkins. Okay, so Sandy Duncan, personal life. I guess she was she was divorced and married a couple of times. She wasn't a very good doctor's wife because she married Dr. Thomas Calcaterra in '73, but they divorced in '79 because he demanded her 1978 Nightclub Act and her refusal to remain at home and be a good, quote, doctor's wife. Okay, so that's the Sandy Duncan. Maybe we'll find some Dunkin' Donuts later. Man, this one's taken a long time. Rupert Murdoch. We're not going to spend much time on old Rupert Murdoch because I insinuated that Rupert Murdoch has already appeared in The Secret when we talked about his daughter and his daughter possibly being this person that we were focused in on. But Rupert Murdoch, again, gets us back to Australia, New Zealand. Australia, New Zealand, and England. Well, we know where Papua New Guinea is. We know who was never found in Papua New Guinea. But let's tie in Rupert Murdoch to the United States. Let's try that. I'm not going to spend much time on it. So Sandy Duncan, originally born in Texas roots. Murdoch made his first acquisition in the United States in 1973 when he purchased the San Antonio Express News. In 1974, Murdoch moved to New York City to expand into the U.S. market. However, he attained interest in Australia and Britain. Soon afterwards, he founded the Star. We talked about the Star and how it was and the whole idea of supermarket tabloids, right? And he purchased the New York Post. So there's another post, the New York Post. A couple of previous stories before, we talked about Post Cereal Company. Marvin Davis. Oh, this all happened afterwards. Sorry, I thought I had another Davis connection. But how do we know that the important part of Rupert Murdoch's contribution to this story is that in cities where a paper is owned by Rupert Murdoch or an eyewitness, why would it be an eyewitness news team? Well, probably because just recently and shortly before in this article, we talked about Mr. Barry, J.M. Barry, who gave us the wonderful production called Peter Pan. And we discovered that Peter Pan's main star, or the one that brought the role of Peter Pan to life, was Sandy Duncan, who they're now lampooning and telling us that she is an eyewitness because that's the best she can do, sadly. Shame on you, Byron. Shame on you. Shame on you. Shame on you. Shame on you. How many times are you going to do this? And many of these people are still alive. Oh, that's why you have this concerted effort to keep the secret a secret. Because some of the people in the era of political correctness would not appreciate the humor that you were giving us in 1982. But I make no value judgment about it because I grew up in this era. And this is the kind of things people published in Star Magazine and other places and that kind of thing. And so that's why your first story tells you about Peter Pan, lets you find out about Sandy Duncan, the lead character in that role, and then they introduce Rupert Murdoch to tell you that there was an eyewitness to the news. Okay, all right. The last one, I would just really like to end there, but I do have Mayor Lindsay on my mind. And if these are the nightmares, maybe Mayor Lindsay is the day mayor because of, the sanitation strike and all the stuff that was involved in his actually being a mayor. But I'll just mention that in passing. Okay, folks, I think that's going to do it for the nightmare. I honestly think this is one of my better analysis of the stories, one of my better putting together of all the details in the story. The only added detail I have is that it almost looks like the night mayor is trying to play a piano. The position of the keys in the image on page 169 is as if the night mayor is trying to play the piano. I don't know what the reference is there yet. I have not figured it out. There is something laying on the ground, but there is definitely a 2-5 or a 1-2-5 in the bricks, and I don't know if we're supposed to where that is. It's either a 1-2-5 or it could be a 1-7. No, I think it's a 1-2-5. It could be just a 2-5. And then if you look at that actual door, it's barred. You get it? That's J.M. Barry. The door is barred. And if you look at the detail in that door, I swear there's horses in there. I see horses in that background, or lobsters or something. So there is something going on in this image that has some additional clues, but I'm not exactly sure what they are. The other one of the nightmare with one hand touching the wall, and the pictures are not good enough for me to decipher what the writing is on the back behind the shoulder. But I do know that it says in the book, and over his left shoulder, L sits. And so you get a guy kind of showing you his shoulder and darkness back there. There's kind of an X in the design of that fence railing there as well. Um, so I think there's some details in the backgrounds of the nightmares images that I haven't been able to discern if they're actually locations, what the uh, 982125. But the guy's definitely it looks like the one nightmare is playing the piano. Okay, folks, I'm going to move on to the next presentation. Thank you for not joining me live. I will check in later.